The Notcast, life, love and misery and deep shit.
Do you ever wonder, what the fuck am I doing here? Is this it? Maybe you've got the car, career, house, family and friends, everything that should make you happy. But still, there's this tenacious sense of being trapped, stuck, lost, or just a bit bloody empty. Welcome to the Notcast, where two therapist coaches, aka theracoaches, lay bare their psycho-spiritual journey of struggle, strife, and realization in their soul search for the keys to a happier, more fulfilling life.
Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to episode 9 of the Notcast, 7 ways to boss rejection and regain your awesomeness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rejection.
Oh, rejection.
Yes, rejection.
Where to start?
I don't even know. I'm currently rejecting the idea of rejection.
Yeah, when I was thinking about it, I also initially got stuck with it, and then, I thought, well, yeah, where to start? Because, well, like we were just saying offline, like for me, I was like, for like a lot of my life, if not my entire life, has just been rejection, some form or another. Not to be melodramatic about it.
Yeah.
But the more I reflected on it, it's like, oh shit, it shows up fucking everywhere. Actually, in loads of contexts, relationships, friends, work, everywhere.
Life.
Yeah. hence my equation. Life is rejection.
Life. Yeah. I kind of had a similar experience. But when I started thinking about it, I was like, oh, wow. So much experience of that in life. Yeah. But also was really aware how differently I see it now and how different that experience is. So I guess it can change.
Yeah.
Which is a positive.
Yeah. Although I don't know about you, I'm not sure the pain or the difficulty of it ever completely disappears.
Well, I guess, one thing I really sat with was the word in itself.
Yeah.
Like, I hate the word rejection. I really don't like the word. Because I guess I hear the word and I can go to a certain place with it. Because I guess rejection in its essence is the act of pushing something or someone away. I guess it's like saying no. And when rejection comes up for me and I'm thinking about rejection, I kind of feel like every time I've had a rejection in my life, I felt like I've been rejected. My personhood has been rejected. The thing that I am has been rejected. Or that's how I perceived it, or that's how I let myself experience it before. So I feel the word doesn't bring up the nicest of connotations for me.
Yeah, I get that. And I guess, without jumping ahead into the tips just yet, yeah, I suppose for me it depends on how we're seeing it in that context. Like, I was talking to someone about this the other day, and the example I was using was like, if you're a cold call salesperson, it's like, if you're seeing that is your job and that people just say no to you, like if you're just there and you see yourself as a no collector and that's what you do, well then my experience is I'm not being rejected as a person, right? These are people just saying no. Well, that's very different to, there's this girl I really, really love, and she's going to solve my entire world, and we're going to be together forever, and I just asked her to marry me and she said no, and now I'm crumbling because my life is ruined. It's a bit of a different experience.
Yeah. I'm guessing that's a very different experience.
A tiny bit.
Love it.
But then that's what I mean, like mechanically, you could say on the surface of it, it's just someone saying no. But for me, it's the whole concept and the perception around those two things. Like if or if there's a person asking somebody to, you know, to marry them, and that person says no, and this person's had in their head that, you know, they're going to be together with this person forever and ever. And then they don't know what the world is going to look like after that, but actually they've got an idea their life is ruined. It's going to be very different to if they don't think their life is going to be ruined, or if the context is different, I guess.
Yeah. I guess that's the thing, right? There's different levels and different experiences. Because when I reflected, I went from spaces like, I don't know, a no for a job to a rejection in a relationship, which is very different experiences. But because of where I was emotionally and in my own development, every no had the same impact. Every no was like, it's like a wound to the heart of me kind of going, oh my God, that's another no. No to Amy. It's kind of how I used to see rejection.
Yeah.
That's definitely shifted a lot, but I'm really aware of the story that I used to create around it. It was like, I'm not wanted. My beingness is not wanted.
Yeah. And
that was, that's actually quite a depressing way to look at it, to be honest, and was quite painful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me ask you then, what does rejection mean to you?
Now, rejection means, well, in its simplest terms, it's this isn't for you, and something else is going to be waiting in the wings. So, yeah, I kind of see it as a learning opportunity, because I know not everything is for me, and the tighter I hold on, the more it hurts. So,
yeah, it makes sense. Well, the things that came up for me were like things like rejection, hurt, pain, disconnection, being alone. That's been the kind of painful, like when I take it personally type rejection. I like what you say about you know, the learning experience. Like something I've found over the years, like the more and more I've done this kind of work, is that, like, if I would propose like working on like a bespoke program with a client, say, like I could potentially get them to say, well, they would say no. You know, I'd say like, this is what I propose, and on one form or another they would say no. And you know, in the early days I'd be like, shit, what have I done wrong? Or, you know, how is this about me? And, you know, it felt like a personal rejection, and like I'd done something wrong, or I'd somehow not been good enough. And yeah, over time, like, it doesn't look like that to me anymore. I don't get me wrong, sometimes I just find like what you were saying about the learning experience, like I do think it's worth me looking at that and asking questions like, you know, how did I create this? And trying to take responsibility for it, to see some learning, like, is there something I could have done differently? And that can be really helpful, rather than just being like, oh, it's nothing to do with me, or, you know, by the other side of it, just blame them. Well, it's just because
yes,
whatever, you know, start pointing fingers. But it's a different experience to feeling, you know, like, I've been rejected as a person, like somehow there's something about my beingness that isn't okay.
Yeah, because that's pretty much where I used to go to. Like, I guess, yeah, I would become the rejection.
You would become the rejection.
I would become the rejection. Like, every part of me would embody that rejection. And I think my biggest learning when I reflected on it was that more than anything else or anybody else, I probably rejected myself more than anybody else ever could. And I guess therein sat the pain of it, the shame, the humiliation, the disgust in myself. It was just like, I fully rejected myself. So I feel like I felt that sense of rejection a lot deeper, just because it was a constant projection of how I treated myself. So yeah, I think that's why when there was a rejection, it would feel so big. Like there would be anger and frustration and guilt. And I would always internalize it. I would always turn it back inwards and almost attack myself for being rejected.
Yeah.
because it must have been something about me. So I couldn't really ever see the situation as an observer. I guess I was just always too involved in it.
Yeah, that's something I didn't have that kind of level of visibility before. Like I didn't see my part in that. It really felt like it was because the other person had rejected me. That's why I was feeling that way. I didn't see, that there was that part where I bought into that I agreed with that, and actually it was my belief in myself, the story that I made out of it, or the whatever you want to call it, was that part, like you succinctly put, as rejecting myself. And I'd like to say that I'm still completely immune to it, but it happened to me even like a couple of weeks ago. There's some old friends of mine got married, and I'm not really connected with them and that whole group of people anymore because me and an ex fell out. And and I have made my peace with that. But something, when I saw some photos up and saw that all of those guys were together, and something in me just got caught up in it, and it was difficult to see. And what I didn't see straight away was that it was that, it was the sneaky ego thought process that was like chipping away about how, it's all the self-blame stuff coming up. Well, that was my fault and all this stuff, and we're just buying into how that was about me as a person, and I'm not saying in that whole, this is maybe a story for another time. It's not like I came out of that completely squeaky clean, but there's a difference between, I think, being able to see, okay, well, I might have made some mistakes, and I've learned from them, and that's just how things happen, and then completely beating myself up and chastising myself, and then feeling all that hurt.
Yeah, I hear that. And I guess that's the beauty of awareness, because when you shine the light of awareness on it every time, you can have a different outcome, and it can look different. So I guess there's a tip without it being called a tip.
What's the tip?
Shine the light of awareness on it.
Shine the light of awareness on it.
Actually, that was one of my tips. So there we go. There's one for free.
One of your 428 tips.
How did you know?
I bet it's something like 13, really, isn't it?
No word of a lie. Bang on 13.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Genuinely, we don't talk about this. I just have a stab.
How rude was that? Oh my gosh. Yes, 13.
Well, I rated myself to 3.
Love it.
Going for consistency.
Excellent.
But yeah, shine the light of awareness, because I think, because for me what happened was I got caught up, and you could say I had awareness of it, but I hadn't. What I had was overthinking, which is, it's not awareness of what's going on. It's being caught up in that story. It's pulled into that fight/avoidance circle of all the negativeness and the self-flagellation or whatever.
Well, that's why I actually called that tip mind the mind trap. Because that's what it feels like. It feels like a mind trap. It's so easy to fall into it. Mm-hmm. I think it's because of the nature of the experience. I know for me, it's the nature of the experience of rejection and the word and the weight that it carries and the meaning we attach to it. Mm-hmm. And have you been on both sides of the rejection equation? Yeah, I felt terrible on both sides. The guilt as a rejecter. But then I feel like I project my experience onto other people because I'm almost assuming that this is how somebody's going to feel because I said no.
Yeah.
So I guess therein lies another story.
Well, yeah, no, I resonate with that as well. I've definitely done it before where I've held back from rejecting somebody because of the guilt that I was afraid I would feel. Because what's inherent there is that presupposition that, well, yeah, if they're then hurt by my rejection, then that's my fault and I'm somehow like bad, or I'm a bad person because I did that to them.
Yes.
But of course, there's no way out of that trap, right? Because then I either have to not reject them and stay miserable if I actually want to reject them, or I have to somehow hope that if I reject them, they'll be okay, which is also can be a bit of a challenge because most people don't do well with rejection.
No, but I guess okay. So now considering I have 100% trust in the fact that I know I'll be okay, no matter what happens, like, I guess I trust that the other person can also be okay if they so choose to be. But I guess if I could, I'd sort of change it to, this is not a rejection, it's more a loving no.
If you were selling rejection, how would you best sell it? What would your top selling technique be?
This is a loving no, darling.
You don't feel rejection, you just feel the love.
Yes. Feel the love in the rejection.
I'm rejecting you with my love.
Whilst I'm taking my love away from you.
This is like a bad 70s song or something.
Yeah, I'll leave that up to you. I'm not even going there. Oh, okay. So the tips. Let's get to these tips.
Well, you've already done the first tip.
Yeah. We've already done the first one.
Well, I'll go with my first one then, as you've got like 13 or 12 more. So my first tip is, what's going on for them? To ask the question, what's going on for them?
Nice.
And the reason I asked that one is because, well, in my experience, I know feeling the rejection, it's really easy to get caught up in that story about how it's about me, or there's something wrong with me, or the other way, which is basically just character assassination on them. Yeah. Turn them into the enemy. And in some ways, I do think that's very, very effective. Something I've experienced, both myself and having it done to me, like having split up with people, is that when someone gets angry, they're more likely to move on, it seems.
Yes, it's a surprise, that, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it was to me before, but now the way I see it, that makes sense, because it's like, if someone's angry, it's they're drawing a boundary. Like that's that separation. I don't think it's necessarily the healthiest thing, or at least to stay there. Sometimes I think it is a necessary and maybe even a helpful transition. But yeah, for me, asking that question anyway, what's going on for them, it helps to understand where they're at. So rather than putting it all onto me or pushing it all onto them, it's like, what's actually going on for them? Like, why did it make sense for them to say no or to do what they did? And not in a kind of letting them off the hook kind of way, but just, to bring more, to kind of balance that polarization, I guess, to either stop the blame game, I guess is probably the best way to put it. Rather than it has to be my fault or your fault, it's like, well, maybe it's neither. Maybe there's something else that makes sense. If it's a romantic thing, maybe I'm just not their type. Or maybe, maybe they've just, I don't know, maybe the relationship no longer makes sense for them. Or if it's a client, it's like, maybe there just wasn't a connection. Like I might have spoken about that previously, but not so long ago, there was a guy that I spoke with, and I, like, long story short, but I just didn't feel a connection with him. Mm-hmm. And so I suggested to him that I probably wasn't the right person to help him. Now, in the past, I would have taken that all on me, being like, why aren't I feeling the connection? What haven't I done right? Maybe I should, make him come back for another session or whatever. But, there just wasn't that there. Yeah. So yeah, what's going on for them, I find is a helpful way to try and get out the blame game and try and move to that curiosity and that sense of understanding.
I like that. Good question. and hard to do in the moment of it. So I just, yeah. Which I guess brings me to mine, which is to actually do an inquiry, a self-inquiry, like take the time and really try and understand what rejection means. It's only through understanding what rejection meant to me and how I took it on board and my relationship with rejection that helped me to then change my experience of rejection. And I think it's one of those, and it's probably a tip in some way, shape or form for every episode, but it's just like that self-inquiry, that reflection on it, taking a step back, which gives you the opportunity to ask the question that you asked, right? Because I do think it's a missing piece of the puzzle for lots of people. It's that honest looking at actually what I'm feeling right now. Because a lot of people, I know that I could be quite dismissive of it in the past, and I would get quite angry and bitter and confused. And when I look at it and when I sort of filter it down, it always comes back to fear. It's because I'm afraid of not being connected, or I'm afraid that I'm not good enough. So it takes that sort of time and that self-inquiry and asking the questions that are difficult to actually make sense of the rejection. And if it feels like an emotional injury, then it gives you the space to nurture that a little bit and just acknowledge that actually I feel hurt, or, you know, I'm afraid, or whatever it might be. So yeah, I would say make the space, the self-inquiry.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I agree with that. I think it's, in my experience, it's so easy to get stuck in, well, one of two things, and they're kind of almost the same thing. It's either the distraction kind of thing, or self-medication, however you want to phrase it. It's like, get away from this somehow, either by drinking it away, eating it away, pill popping it away, or gaming it away, whatever it is, some way to not pay attention to this.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it was probably stuffing my face with cake. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
And don't get me wrong, like, I don't diss some of that stuff. Like, I've definitely found in the past, like when I didn't know what to do, like when I felt shit, like playing computer games for hours really helped me out in a way. It's not necessarily something I prescribe, but when I didn't know what else to do, it was a great way of being able to kind of get out of my head for a bit.
Yeah. Do you know, sometimes I feel like things like that just disrupt that flow.
Yeah.
Kind of like short circuits where you're at. So it just gives you a little bit of space where you're not fully focused on the negative feelings of it. So it just, kind of works.
I can't tell you the number of times I've either done that where I've maybe spent all day playing games, or I've, I might have felt a bit shit about the idea of binge watching some Netflix or whatever, but then actually by the end of a binge, it's like, oh, I start to feel better. I wonder why that is. Well, it's like, well, because I've actually finally managed to get into it and not been just running this shit round in my head. And that's the other distinction I was going to make is the self-inquiry. For me, there's a subtle difference between the self-inquiry and the getting lost in the overthinking. Because for me, that overthinking piece, like, it can seem like I'm in inquiry, but in my experience, what I've found is that's more like it's some version of it's like I'm either trying to attack it and solve it, or I'm actually trying to run away from it. Like I'm somehow I'm in threat mode with it, and I'm somehow combating it in fight or flight, and it just goes round and round and round because there's no way out, and it actually just seems to dig things deeper. And it can feel like I'm inquiring about it because I'm trying to, inverted commas, solve the problem, but I'm not. It's like I'm not bringing the right energy or the right perspective to inquire, so I just end up going around the same bloody track and ending up on some form of, well, I'm fucked, rather than finding an actual way out.
I love that. Yeah. I guess that's yeah, that's the difference between self-inquiry and sitting in the shit. It's like, yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. Inquiry, balanced inquiry at that, not just why is this all the other person's fault?
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Well, and to be honest, the challenge for me has always been noticing that. Like it's got so much better. Like I can catch it so much more often and more quickly. But I do wonder, is that something that we always have to practice? And I think where I'm at now, I think probably it is. Maybe there are some real top enlightened people or meditators or something that just are constantly conscious and they catch everything always, so their ego is constantly silent, but I've definitely never met one.
Yeah, like I know I'm 100% committed to this journey for the rest of my life. There is no switching it off or stopping it, or because every time a situation comes up, and I guess even having that awareness that my first response or reaction is normally an ego response or reaction. Mm-hmm. Now, just knowing that and having that awareness means that when that reaction or response happens, I can actually step back and I can see it and go, okay, so I know what's going to happen first. And that's okay. So I think just building up that awareness, which, would be good to maybe reflect on before the rejection actually happens. There you go, there's another tip. That wasn't a tip.
Was that more wishful thinking?
Well, I guess because I guess I'm thinking about myself being a listener at certain points in my own life. And I know I'd be sitting there going, well, it's easy for you to say. But I guess the thing for me is that I know that neither of us are sat here because it's been easy. It's just a dedication and a commitment to looking at ourselves. I think it's always good to kind of do those inquiries about ourselves and learn about ourselves. Sometimes nicer to do it before the shit hits the fan. Then I have to do it now because the shit has hit the fan. So yeah.
Oh yeah, but then to that point, it's like when I think about the photos that I saw a couple of weeks ago. In an ideal world, obviously I would have seen that and just felt nothing but love for that and then moved on with my day. But clearly something on some level got to me and I got pulled in and I didn't see it. However, I knew on some level what was going on, not enough that I could just let it go straight away because it did affect me. But I didn't end up massively down the rabbit hole. I didn't start sending angry or miserable texts to everybody or whatever. And it meant once I did get back to a good place, I was able to let it go again because I knew the process that had happened. I knew that wasn't really about me or what had happened. It was about my perspective about it in that moment. And is there still some deeper stuff maybe to sort out? Possibly, probably.
Always. Duh.
But I also knew that trying to resolve that at that time was probably not going to be very helpful.
Yeah. Hence the tip. I don't know, maybe the one tip in its entirety is fucking awareness.
Yeah. Yeah, although you could then upgrade it again and just be like the one tip for everything all the time is love, right?
Oh, that is my tip for everything.
Helps to chunk down a little bit though.
Okay, I think we're going askew with our 7 ways today. So
that's fine.
Yeah, people are going to have to pick them out themselves, like a pick and mix.
So, well, my second one then, which does kind of lead on from your one, is what can I learn from this? And what can I learn from this? Now, initially, my tip was going to be something a bit more hardline, like how did I create this? Which is a question I love, but I find that used in the wrong context without the right framing, it can come across as like, how is this my fucking fault?
Yeah.
Which I think is unhelpful.
Mm-hmm.
Though what I do find is helpful is to look at, it's kind of like what I was talking about when I talked about my first one, or even before then, I can't remember. But it's like, what was my part in this? and not from a place to blame, but like, what did I bring to this? Like, blame's the wrong word, but it's like, for me, a relationship is like, it's a two-way thing. And then you've got the relationship, which is the third thing, right? The relationship is its own, if you like, its own entity. You change one of the variables of one of the people either side of it, or one of the objects, whichever it is, you change the relationship.
Yeah.
So for me, it just makes logical sense to look at, well, what was my part in this?
Yeah.
But there's that subtlety to it, because even as I say it, like I can hear the so you're saying it's my fault, though.
Yeah, I guess, because I guess it's not okay. So there's a difference between looking at something judgmentally,
yeah,
and then going, what part did I fucking play in this? Or I guess it's that knowingness that a relationship is like a dance.
Yeah.
So then whoever's involved in the relationship is part of the dance. And every action or inaction has a consequence. It has an impact. So I guess it's more an inquiry again as to, well, I was a participant in it and so were they.
Yeah, exactly that. And this, it's the right word, judgment. I talk about the blame game, and that's what I was kind of pointing at when I was saying about, you don't have to play the blame game. It's the difference between judgment or blame, I guess, and ownership, right? Like, what's my part in this? Not because it has to be somebody's fault, but so that I can understand what I did, or even if it's just to understand actually there was nothing else I could have done. Like, when I was that potential client that I talked to, where I realized there was just no connection. Like, I could have made a whole story about how I wasn't good enough, or how, well, he should have opened up more and blah, blah, blah. And some of that was a useful reflection. Like, well, yeah, it didn't help that he didn't open up, but it also didn't help that, the approach I took clearly wasn't enough to help him open up. Those were both good reflections. Like, is it either person's fault? Well, no, not really. And the same as when I've split up with partners in the past, or when I've fell out with friends over breakups and stuff. There's a difference between, for me, looking at, well, what was my part in creating this, so that I can learn from it, as opposed to either having to point the finger of blame. Because for me, that's the thing with the blame game. Like, someone has to lose, and either we end up feeling like shit, which isn't helpful, or we blame someone else, and then we don't have chance to actually do anything about that other than feel a bit righteous for pointing the finger.
Yeah. Well, I guess that makes you quite powerless as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Kind of go, yeah. Just like,
feels good. I feel good because I'm blaming you, but also I can't really do it other than call you a bastard and feel good about it.
Yeah, I'm just going to swear at you. Yeah. Feel better. No. Yeah. Love it. Oh, okay. So my next one is I get to choose the version of the film I watch and the ending.
Oh, tell me more.
Okay, so there was a couple of times in my life that I was particularly thinking about. So when I was younger and my dad left, my parents got divorced, and that felt like I held it really as such a big rejection of myself for so many years. Like, and I couldn't see anything else. So that was the film. That's what it became. It became, my dad left me. Yeah. He rejected me because I'm not good enough. He didn't stay. He couldn't stay, And I guess when I've reflected back on it now, it's more, the whole film is different because it wasn't about me. So it's really about, everything can look different if we look at it from a different perspective. And I guess in things like rejection, I know that I can very quickly make it all about me. Yeah. And actually, it's not all about me. So it kind of speaks to your last point, right? It's not just fully about me. Again, it's an interplay. Yeah. And there's something completely different going on for the other person or whatever it might be. So obviously, I'm going to choose to see it how I want to see it. I'm going to choose to see it how it fits into my perception of who I am. So when I look at it from a different angle, what I see is it was the best thing that could have happened at that time. Because it would have been horrendous had it not happened in the long run. So actually, that film now has a different ending, and I see it's a whole different film. It's like, that was probably the best case scenario at that time. And it definitely wasn't a rejection of me as a human being. However, the resulting actions from there was going into every relationship thinking I would get rejected again.
Yeah.
So then that became my film, full stop. And I felt quite powerless.
Yeah, but...
So I think that whole process of the self-inquiry and the awareness and being able to ask those questions meant that I was able to choose a whole different version. And I think that that's the thing. Sometimes it feels like we're stuck in that one way because this thing is happening to me. And obviously I can't see it any other way. But if you can step back slightly and do the self-inquiry and ask those questions, you always have the opportunity to reframe it. That's in your power. Like, the rejection might not have been in my power or how I felt about it, but how I chose to see it, that was definitely in my power.
It's interesting because something I can still struggle with at times is that concept of choosing how to see it. Because I think technically it's probably true, but I also know from experience, like being in that powerless state of mind, like it doesn't feel like a choice.
Yeah.
That's something I always found challenging. Like it doesn't take a lot to switch it. And I've realized once I've done something which has made me realize, oh, hang on a minute, I do have agency here. Like I can do something. I can affect the situation, or even if it's just affect my perspective on myself, because I've like it can be a bit like a what's the metaphor I'm thinking of? Like knocking over the house of cards or dominoes or something. It's like the domino effect, right? Mm-hmm. Once you do that. But I found it can be a real challenge from that place of where everything looks like impossible, because it's almost like, well, if it's impossible, why try?
And I think that's the thing. That's where I used to get stuck all the time. Just knowing where I am now, that actually I can choose to see it differently. So even when I'm not, that awareness doesn't leave me. So then it's just like, I know it's sitting there going, well, you could choose to see this differently or not. And then I get to sit with the fun of that and go, I'm wondering what I'm getting out of this right now, because I know it's serving me in some way. Otherwise I wouldn't be sat here.
See, I kind of, what I hear in that is, well, two things came up to me as you were saying that. One is, I think if I was using that language to myself, then my mind would use that as a stick to beat me with. Well, you're kind of choosing to do this, you useless bastard. So why are you choosing it? Why aren't you choosing to see this differently and feel better about yourself?
Where is the love? David, where is the love?
But this is my point, because I don't think I'd use those words, but I think what has helped me is, if I'm stuck in that place, it's coming back to knowing that I'm just not seeing it yet. And so not so much saying to myself like I'm choosing this, but just knowing that like I'm just not seeing it yet. And I suppose you could say in some ways maybe then that's not giving me the agency to change something at that point. Possibly, I don't know. I just, like I said, I know like when I'm feeling good and capable, it makes sense. Well, yeah, I can see this differently. I feel like I've got the agency, but from that difficult triggered place where everything feels outside of me, yeah, that hearing I can choose. If I had the energy, I'd tell the person to fuck off, I think.
Excellent. I know what's coming my way. like, did you hear how subtly they printed that? Because any second now he's going to tell me to fuck off. I love that. Excellent.
Amy, just hypothetically, how would you feel right now if I told you to go fuck yourself?
I'm not even going to answer that.
It's okay, you can ponder it for later on, it's fine.
Oh, dear me. Okay, yay, okay, bye. Oh, gosh. I guess that's the thing, though. I think in that is another tip by itself, which is find the way that works for you, because that language truly works for me. And I know it's not going to work for everybody. So for me, I know that I have to kick my ass a little bit and just be like, you're making this choice, darling. It's like, so I guess that in itself is another tip, right? Like find the way that works for you.
Yeah, but I suppose what I hear in the message there is it's when you see it. It's when you see that actually that this is a creation of your perspective, your perception, and therefore inherent in that is this can be seen differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe you don't know the mechanism of it right now, but for me, the knowingness that it is somehow created by me and therefore it can be changed, that is empowering.
Yeah.
So, do you have a third one or a fifth one at this point? Seventh one? However many we're at.
It's that time. It's love o'clock.
Always, every episode. When's she going to drop the love bomb?
Oh, I think I should have love o'clock every day.
Told you that's a different episode.
Fuck off.
You can call it that as well, but love o'clock's probably.
Oh, no, I'm not even going there.
You just did 3 times.
No, you did.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I guess this one really came from the fact that when I didn't like or love myself, I rejected myself, especially if somebody else would reject, or there was a rejection of some kind. So I think to not dismiss myself when there is a situation where there's a no or there's rejection, I kind of have to like myself or love myself enough to go, it's okay. And to give myself what I would give other people, which is compassion and understanding. And I would listen and I would be there for them, which was massively a missing component when it was me. So I know that rejection can be difficult with what it brings up. So that is definitely not the space to reject yourself in, because then the shit is literally going to hit the fan. So be nice to yourself in that space with awareness. Bring the awareness to it. How am I treating myself in this, and why?
And I suppose for me, what comes up for me when you talk about that, because I agree that like rejecting of self and basically believing the bullshit stories about myself, they aren't helpful. And I guess for me, there's the difficulty is noticing that that's happening. Like at a certain level of awareness, either it looks like, the hurt is because of the rejection itself, because of what that other person has done.
Yeah.
Or the story that I have about myself seems true. Mm-hmm. And for me, I suppose for me, there are those perspectives. Then I'm not always seeing that there's this self-rejection going on, that there's this, beating myself off, that up there's...
Okay! Again, that's a whole different episode, David.
Oh dear. All right, 1-1.
Yes.
Hey, we just did that. So, train of thought, lost it now.
I'm not surprised.
So yeah, it's not always seeing the self-rejection. It's But for me, yeah, you know, I see more and more deeply every time that it's there. It's that there is that story or that sense of like, I'm not okay somehow, and that avoidance of whatever it is, and not being okay with, you know, bringing that love and acceptance to myself in that experience, whatever it is. So my third one then, don't hide, connect.
Oh my God, that was my seventh one.
Well, it was bound to show up when you did over fucking 10, wasn't it? Amy's giving me the double finger.
Thanks.
Not that double finger, that is a separate episode.
This episode is going to shit.
So, don't hide, connect. So, well, for me, I suppose it follows on from the self-rejection stuff that we were talking about, because, well, for me, there's a couple of levels of connection. There's that connection to self and the present, but then there's the connection to others. And for me, I often say to people like shame. Shame's like mold, and it loves the dark, but it breeds in the dark. You know, if you think about, if you go like mold that's been in the dark, it's kind of a bit icky, and you definitely want to not go in and clean it up. You want to like shut the door and leave it in there, but then it festers. It's like, hide it away. Don't go in that room. But that's kind of where it works its black magic, if you like, and it keeps itself alive. So what I've definitely found when I've felt rejected and I've started to believe whatever stories are about myself, and there's just that sense of disconnection and not okayness, I've hidden myself away, either like physically or not talked about it, and not, you know, just somehow not connected, and for me that can start a difficult spiral.
Yeah. I think that was my go-to. I would just withdraw completely. And go within. So it's like, nobody can hurt me and I'm safe in here. And actually, I'd just be beating myself up. So really, I wasn't safe. But yeah, I totally get that. I feel like people do that a lot with rejection. Yeah.
And, you know, I've had it a couple of times in my life now where I've lost a lot of friends because of a falling out, often over a relationship. And something I've ended up doing is disconnecting. And you know, in the past, I've thrown accusations, been like, they all left me, or, you know, she stole all my friends or whatever. And you could argue maybe there's some truth in that, but that's kind of a powerless way of looking at it. Because when I'm really honest, a lot of it is because I disconnected myself. Now, was there some tension and difficulty? Yeah, I particularly remember one night with one of a friend of mine bawling me out in the middle of the street, drunk.
Nice.
Yeah, well, you know, understandably, because his friend was hurt. So, you know, I can understand it. But I thought me and him were friends. And so to get that was hurtful. Now, I did actually message him and was like, no, I thought we were friends. But then interestingly, he did message back and was like, you know, did you want to meet up and talk about it? And I actually said no. Yeah.
Wow.
And for a long time, I told the story, you know, and I was hurt, and I was like, oh, it's not fair, and all this, because the disconnection happened on a wider scale. Like, I stopped getting invited to stuff, so it was pretty obvious stuff was shifting. But yeah, if I'm really honest, like, he'd agreed to come and meet me and talk things out, and I think through my fear and discomfort and probably my shame about the whole thing, the whole situation, I said no. But of course, then really, who created that disconnection? I mean, I can point the finger at him for getting drunk and bawling me out, but
yeah,
he extended the olive branch, and I declined it. So, who rejected who?
Therein lies the mystery.
Yeah.
The games you play.
Well, yeah, because what I have found the hard way is with anything like that, there is magic in the presence of connection if we're willing to show up and get vulnerable. Yeah, and in some respects, it was difficult for me to message him and to be honest, and that was my attempt at reconnection. But I think then when he offered to meet me, that was at the time that was a level above where I was prepared to go. Obviously, I wasn't prepared to go to that level of vulnerability, but then because of that disconnection stayed.
I guess again, it's that, I don't know if it's a little bit of distance or being able to give yourself that, I guess, reaction versus response time. Because in response is quite different to in reaction. So being able to look at it, the entirety of it, not just this part, because this part is the bit I want to look at. Yeah.
Well, into your earlier point, I think, I think at the time especially, there was still a lot of self-blame and shame on my part for what had happened. So, for what I'd done, in terms of my ex and the bigger picture and what led to that. So, to your point about self-inquiry, I think I probably hadn't done enough of that at that point. I think if I'd have felt completely confident that I could go in and have a conversation and not end up feeling like shit at all, would I have been happy to do it? Maybe I would have done.
I guess that's the beauty of life, though. If we bring awareness to it, we can create a different experience next time. We can create something different out of it, even down the line.
Yeah.
So I guess it's the importance of that. Obviously, we can't highlight that enough. Okay.
So, any closing tips on bossing rejection and regaining awesomeness?
Yeah. A no doesn't have to be a rejection. It might just mean that there's something way more fabulous out there waiting for you, that it's an opportunity to look at yourself and to do something different. You don't need to attach to the outcomes as much as we do.
Yeah, I like that. So my closing thought would be, who you really are, your beingness is not rejectable. You just might think it is at times, but you're bloody wrong.
Love it. Yay.
What episode are we on now? 7, 8?
No,
9?
that was 9.
9.
Yes, David is definitely up to speed with where we're at. Well, there's the end of another fabulous episode.
Episode 9 done and dusted.
You've been listening to the Notcast podcast, Life, Love, Misery and Deep Shit with your TheraCoach hosts,
Amy Dave
and David Bird.
Amy is a transformative spiritual and self-love coach and therapist who takes people on a powerful journey towards self-love and personal transformation. She empowers her clients to discover the truth of who they really are, their true purpose, and the truest expression of themselves, whilst enabling them to navigate life and its challenges with ease, grace, and above all, love. Create relationships that rock their world and let go of the toxic shit that holds them back. You can connect with Amy on her Facebook at facebook.com/amy.dave11. That's AMI.DAVE.11.
David is a transformative coach and hypnotherapist who guides his clients on a journey of self-exploration and transformation to smash the shit out of their mental stumbling blocks and send their emotional baggage packing, helping them to get back in the driver's seat, create a more powerful, loving connection to life, and unleash onto the world their bright, shining light of authentic give-a-fuckness. You can connect with David at his website, dbch.co.uk. That's dbch.co.uk.
The Notcast.